My name is Mel Padden. I'm the newly minted director of developer advocacy for Casper, and I've been here since about July. So you can find me on Telegram at Mel Padden. I'm in all of the groups that most of you guys are in, and the idea is to essentially be a bit more available to the developer community as we try to develop out these features which make it easier to develop on Casper. I was particularly pleased by Ihor's presentation there, and his mention of, the, shall we say, the friction involved in developing on Casper. It's been noted for some time, and we're listening, and we're trying to make things a bit more easy for you, which is where I come in. So there are some developments. That's also my email there, mel@casper.network, if you hadn't already guessed. And so, yeah, that's me. Now, why would you build on Casper? Is a question that was asked yesterday. It's sometimes asked, well, why would you? Our stated intention is to attract more developers to Casper. Developers are the lifeblood of the system. They bring in liquidity, they bring in eyes on the network. It essentially is the lifeblood of what we're trying to do. So with that in mind, you have to ask the question, why? And who are we talking about when we're talking about Casper developers, DApp developers? We're looking to attract mid-senior level engineers, like you good folk here, obviously, who essentially know what they're doing. And people who are mission focused. One of the things which was made clear yesterday in the talks is that, those of us in the blockchain industry, and to some degree in IT in general, we sometimes exist in something of a bubble. We have our jargon, we have our little terms, and we have our little language that we use to describe these things, and a lot of the ecosystem kind of feeds on itself. What we're looking to do is build Casper to the extent that people are building apps that are focused on the end user, and there's a mission there to be achieved and a job to be done. And to that extent, we're trying to get out of the way of the developer. So that's a key focus to be maintained over the next period of time. Also, yeah, we're trying to get the kind of people on board who are not exactly trend-driven, not focused on hype as such. Again, mission-focused people who are trying to get a job done. And yes, they're generally well-informed, as most of us are, as to the state of the art and what's going on in the space. So let's talk about developer priorities. By this I mean, if you're choosing a platform to build on, what are the things that go through your mind apart from just convenience? So rewards, earning potential. At the end of the day, that's what we're all here for, right? At some point we're trying to make some money. What form does that take? For some developers, they're looking to gain and improve valuable and marketable skills, which they can then go on and use in other contracts, other jobs, other contexts. It's very important to them that there are active projects on this chain. And that's very important to us all in general, because it feeds innovation, it feeds traffic, and brings eyes on the chain. This is, yeah, as I say, based on market forces, where people are moving, the adoption rates of the chain. This feeds back into the profitability of the chain. And the profitability is not just simply the amount of money that you can make yourself, but it's the money you can generate for other people. Yes, so this kind of feeds into the next part of it, which is the features of the chain, capturing DeFi upside. There are innovations like LSD, liquid staking, which are on the way, and these form an important part of the developer priorities. So yes, as I say, specific use cases, features that are built into the chain are added on more likely to make it more easy to use them for, let's say, for instance, NFTs. These are also important considerations when deciding which chain you're going to use. Zero knowledge rollups are another thing which there's heavily investment from the R&D side on. My colleague Mark Greenslade and his team have been doing quite a lot of work on this side, and I think you can probably look forward to seeing some developments on that. But I don't want to speak for them. They will speak to you when the time comes in terms of what we can expect to hear from that. But that's That's something that we absolutely need to be on top of, quite frankly, as a chain, because the potential it has to add to reduce gas costs and introduce efficiencies for the larger ecosystem is hugely important if you want to stay relevant. Yeah. Now, this is the developer experience. This is the part where I come in. This is my chosen sphere of influence. Right. The idea is essentially to make it easier to develop products on Casper. To that extent, I was very pleased with the presentation given by Ihor right now, because that's exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for, is to stimulate that kind of development and this kind of thinking. It's not exactly friendly at the moment, and one of, I mean, for instance, the Casper.name thing. I'm interested to see how that works. I'll be very much looking forward to hearing further presentations upon that subject. Human readable codes, human readable names for things, they reduce the cognitive load, and that's a key component. And I was pleased to hear you talk about that. We want to get out of the way of the developer so that you can focus on developing the core of your application, the core functionality of your application. All of these things just get in the way and they waste your time if you have to worry about abstruse public keys and private keys to worry about. So DX, yeah, has a direct effect on the cost to market. And that's a real measurable cost. If you're developing any application, if you have to spend longer developing it, it's not just a pain, it's a cost. And that affects the uptake of this particular network. So that's a very real consideration. DX can also override other factors if you're deciding what chain you want to build on. It depends on the context, of course. It depends on your appetite for, I guess, pain. And if there are any other compelling factors about the chain you're looking at which would override bad DX. If the DX is good enough, and if there's a feature that's missing, if the DX is good enough, you might just choose to use that chain and build your own features, which is something that we're seeing more and more in this space, and something which we would encourage. So yeah, this is the key bit. We're looking to improve community contribution, which I guess means you guys, and we're looking to improve the communication between the Casper Association and the community, and we're looking to more actively recruit features and ideas for features and things which may not be marquee features from the point of view of visibility external to the chain and external to the community, but which make life easier and better for all of us who are working with the chain. And that's really our priority at this point. Yeah, the other thing about the DX, which is an effect which I've noticed in the community, is that if the DX is poor, and if it's one of those things where there's a long road to climb to get the basic functionality going out of the box, you end up with this, what I call a skills silo, where the barrier to entry makes it such that the skills tend to pile up in the few developers who have time and skills to put into it to get proficient with the platform. That reduces the number of developers that we have to draw on to generate further features, if you see what I mean. So it generates a bottleneck for high quality features, high quality applications, and it's a drag on the platform as a whole. So these are some reasons why DX is important to us, and it should be important to you, and it's going to be driven going forward. Yeah, community support. This is something that we're pretty strong on actually in Casper. There is a pretty active community on this platform. We have quality devs, we have quality people around, and it's our intention to engage with that. It's one of the strengths of this chain. So I guess thank you for that. And yeah, it is a good indicator of platform quality if there's if there is a strong and active developer community around it. So these are all the reasons why you might choose one chain over the other, right? So let's have a look at what we consider the important components of Web3 DX. The code build test cycle. This is something common to every software developer. It doesn't matter if you're working on blockchain, web, if you're working on some sort of business app. You code something, you build it, and then you run it, you test it. This cycle is super important because if this cycle is slow and it's painful, if you repeat this process 50 times a day, and if it takes 10 seconds longer, then that's a huge chunk out of your day, you know, and it's a huge drain on developer productivity, quite frankly. So this is one of the things which we want to optimize. Quality of documentation, we're up to date, concise, and relevant. Documentation needs to be up to date, and there need to be end-to-end examples of dApps to get people up and running. This is narrative and approach. The quality of documentation is something which has varied over the course of time, and it's something which needs a cohesive approach to be taken to it, which is, again, with the release of the dev portal this year, is something that we're taking quite seriously and will be going forward. So, and multimedia experience, our good friend Dylan Ireland has been working hard on a video series called the developer series, the Casper developer series, which I believe is available now, but we will be talking about that further later on. Now, here comes the tooling. So at the moment, there's not a great deal. IDE plugins, and this is the key, utilities for monitoring and alerting, monitoring the chain, right? Utilities for creating test nets, local and remote, both for unit testing, automated unit testing, and for simply manually testing your code. There are facilities there, but again, a certain amount of knowledge is needed to use them, and it's not well integrated into the tool chain. Speculative execution is something that's just come down, and fairly new feature, but it's necessary, it's super necessary for optimizing gas cost estimation, and for indeed debugging your code. So yes, let's talk about SDKs. We're covering the main languages. This is the way this should be. Consistent and discoverable is key, well written. And yes, an active developer community with these SDKs, with regular commits. Some of those SDKs haven't had commits in several months. And that's something that's been neglected, but we're actively pursuing that now to make sure that these SDKs are kept up to date, and will be. Documentation should be delivered as part of the SDK and updated when the code is. We all know the pain of trying to use an SDK and discovering that something doesn't work the same way it used to. It still works, or it works according to somebody. You just have to find the last person that used it, and that's basically your documentation, which, to be taken seriously as a large platform, needs to change, quite frankly. So that's one thing that, and yes, documentation should follow a standard structure across the SDKs. If you're doing the same thing in a different language, the narrative structure of how you accomplish certain tasks of signing deploys and such shouldn't change so much that it's not recognizable as a pattern across each SDK. This is something which we're planning to enforce going forward, getting a little bit tougher on us, quite honestly, in terms of the standard of the SDKs that we're promoting and helping to maintain. So at the moment, our SDKs are inconsistent. So same operations are done in different ways, inconsistent. There's some basic errors like inconsistent naming conventions. JS is virtually undocumented, that's going to change. This means it takes a long time to become productive if you're developing using the JS SDK. This is part of the skill siloing that I mentioned earlier. The longer it takes to become productive, the less people are going to do it. That reduces the developer base, and that's bad for everybody, basically. Deployment and testing of code in the chain is cumbersome. That's true. It's a manual process that needs to be followed through. Some of the work that Make have done has made this a bit easier, but it's still there's a lot of manual steps. There's a lot of clicking around. You have to leave the IDE go to the browser and do some clicking and then do some copying and pasting, and you end up back in the IDE and messing around with scripts quite a lot of the time. And all of this just adds to the time sink involved in developing Casper applications. What we're looking to do is reduce inefficiencies, not so much introduce new things. Yeah, the estimating of gas prices has been an issue which has been mentioned to us numerous times. As I say, that is changing in 1.5. Incidentally, yes, the documentation about how to use that particular feature is already in the works and allowing for checking and make sure that it's in line with the actual way that that feature works. That should be deployed soon as well for your delectation. Yeah, no, there's no key utility for monitoring deploys, which there is a utility there, but it's asynchronous as such, and you have to refresh it yourself. And there's a lot of clicking around going on, and what we're looking to do is find a way to build a utility which either integrates into an IDE like Visual Studio Code, or is a standalone app which manages this process in a consistent way, which is a little bit more fluid, and as I say, in terms of onboarding people onto the blockchain, sort of removes a level of abstraction that people have to understand from the point of view of how their code operates on the chain. Yeah, smart contract DX, as I say, code build test cycle is slow. We've covered this. This is kind of a walkthrough of what you end up doing if you're building your first Casper smart contract, and you repeat these 8 steps many times. And as I say, these are the steps, the issues which I've covered. A lot of plumbing is done manually with strings being copied around. And yeah, it's a magnet for human error. If you give humans a chance to do something wrong, they'll probably do it that way. So we should be trying to remove that as much as is possible to improve both the quality of the code and how many applications we can expect to see in Casper over the next year, let's say, or so. And above all, it's just tedious. So, and the amount of strings being used makes it difficult for the compiler to check, and this is something which MatchEdge has been doing some work to try to mitigate that particular issue. So, I mean, if you're using the Odra framework, this is something that you don't really have to deal with too much. Yeah, this is the current state of the dev portal. I mean, these are issues which we've noticed internally, which some of you guys may or may not agree with. One of the problems that we have is duplicate information. Different people have described the same process multiple times in the documentation. There's a feeling that there's the same thing happening in terms of the code being written for the framework, in terms of the SDKs, in terms of the features being developed, which is one of the reasons why we're attempting to improve communication in the developer community, both with us and intra-developer communication. So to that end, that's quite frankly where I come in and where my team comes in to improve that level of communication. And yeah, so tutorials are a key element of attracting first-time devs. And some of the tutorials existing out there, they're out of date, don't work, and lack of quality. This is one of my key things, SDK documentation being in the dev portal itself. Instead of being in GitHub where it belongs, documentation for code should be with the code. Again, if you give people a chance to do something badly, they'll probably do it that way first. So if code is updated, what are the chances that the developer is then going to go over to the dev portal and submit an update for the documentation according to that SDK? Probably close to 0, I would say. So if the documentation is with the code itself, that problem is at least mitigated, if not removed entirely. But so that's one of the changes that this is exactly making the point I just made. It is a maintenance nightmare, it just doesn't happen. So that's one of the changes that we're making. This is all to do with it's the tooling. The intrinsic inefficiencies in the programming model have made it hard to develop in Casper, and we're already working around this inefficiency. And again, I'm speaking about the Odra framework. One of the key things that doesn't happen is metadata being emitted from smart contracts. So to build tools, you need to reflect effectively on the smart contracts, and it's all done in such a, at the moment it's done in a very loosely typed fashion, which gives you a lot of flexibility, but it doesn't give you a lot of information that you need to do if you're going to build effective tools and full-featured tools. The metadata, emitting metadata from the smart contracts as part of the compile cycle is one of the key enhancements which has to happen before almost anything else on the tooling side. So we're anxious to get this up and running, and that's one of the things which will end up in the framework in the next few months, one way or the other. Yeah. So again, limits with tools. These are all the points essentially which I've made. Yeah. I mean, in terms of innovation from the community, we do have an active community who want to build things, and it's up to us to make it easy for them to do so. So the feeling is, or the plan is that when we build the metadata feature, that it will enable the building of much better tools, which will in turn enable the building of much better applications and in an easier way. Again, the no integrated workflow for build, deploy, and test. This is the point I made about jumping around between browsers, IDEs, multiple windows. We need to stop doing that, and yeah, the utilities for monitoring the chain. Yes. So yeah, this is the plan. This is a rough roadmap of where we're going with Casper over the next few months. The smart contract metadata should be a fairly quick win, and it's going to encourage innovation and open up this platform. ODRA is, if it's not by now, it certainly should be. It's considered a first-class citizen of the Casper ecosystem. So there's a lot of work already have been done with that, and the dev you guys should be already familiar with it. I hope you are. It's yeah, somewhat similar to Ink. The next possible step on this roadmap is building an actual dedicated utility to integrate all developer-focused interaction with the chain, specifically when building dApps and smart contracts. So this would be to follow the course of a deploy, and to monitor it in an asynchronous fashion, which is seamless to the developer, such that they don't have to worry about the shall we say, the workflow of how a deploy executes, that is represented in real time to them using an advanced utility of this kind. This is, yeah, this is a possible name that we're going to use for it, Demiurge. Demiurge, by the way, was from I believe it's Greek mythology. Essentially, it was the bringer of order to the physical world. So the point of this tool is to allow you to drill down into the interactions that you have with the chain. This will become more important in terms of monitoring chain events, which will be, as we say, as we discussed earlier today, will be coming up, and it will probably end up as a plugin for VS Code, but we're open to suggestions on that. I mean, and yes, it will be heavily leveraging the smart contract metadata. Essentially, it will be built on this to enable people to properly check how their code is executing on chain. Yeah, but all of these dev adjacent common tasks in one place, so that you're really only switching between maybe two windows, perhaps even just one, which should streamline your development workflow considerably, make life easier for everyone, and as I say, stimulate innovation in this ecosystem. So again, the SDKs, we are looking to, as I say, improve the predictability of the SDKs and improve the structural consistency of the SDKs across the various languages. The standardized testing framework was developed by the guys in Stormy. It's essentially a series of Cucumber libraries, which allow you to essentially specify. There's a set of standard tests which you can execute against any SDKs. They're in the business of implementing these Cucumber tests across a bunch of SDKs right now. I believe they've done Python, Java, and they're working on C# and Go right now. And we're expecting to see those implementations finished, I think, by the end of September. But we will keep you updated on that in the Casper Dev Connect Telegram channel, which essentially has become the de facto way that we communicate with you guys. This is a baseline quality control for all SDKs. The important thing about this is that with the new features which are coming to the platform in the next few months, there will be changes to the SDKs. That will mean restructuring and refactoring those SDKs, but we need to retain trust that those SDKs still function as delivered, and that's the important thing about this standardized testing framework. It's what it allows us to do, and should actually be a stimulation for innovation in and of itself, simply for that reason, because it gives you a sense of you need that sense of security when you're attempting to make serious changes to code, that you have a sufficient testing framework to allow you to make those changes and have confidence that your code still works. Again, this standard SDK structure is something which is enabled by the standard testing framework, because we can now make changes to these SDKs and say we want this to be a certain way, and still make changes to the code and still be confident that it works. Yeah, so SDK maintainers in the grant program will be asked to use standard tests in the future as a basic part for their milestone submission. It needs to work, and it needs to comply to the standard tests, and that's as a minimum. Okay. There are new SDKs in the works for Unity and Unreal. Unity first, I think, and Unreal, I'm not sure yet when that's going to be scheduled, but it's going to happen at some point. As we were discussing earlier on, the gaming industry and is a big point of big interest for us. And right now, yeah, the Unity one, which will be based on the .NET SDK, based on C# SDK. There is an enhancement to that SDK. Again, this is the kind of thing which is assisted by the standardized testing framework, because we can take the existing C# SDK, make a few minor changes to it which are necessary to target Unity, and then we can simply run our standardized tests and see what breaks, which makes life a lot easier and gives us a lot more of a good Bauchgefühl, as they would say in Germany. So that's also in the works. And as I said before, yes, the existing SDKs are being upgraded. All right, documentation. How was the time? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're improving the quality of the dev portal. Improving the quality of the dev portal. This is an ongoing task. This is not something which is just done and then we can stop doing it. But we are removing things like duplicate information, redundant information. We're removing SDK-specific information in the docs repository. We're improving the SDK-specific documentation in the SDKs. We're highlighting tutorials for novice developers to bring new developers into the chain, because we still need that, and the developer series is available. I am available for feedback. There is a new developer-focused newsletter in the works as well, which you should be experiencing, if not this month, then next month. It's going to be a monthly thing. The idea is simply things like the developments from Make, things like the developments which I've mentioned here, the status of developer-focused work will be, what's the word I'm looking for, curated into a developer-focused newsletter, which you can read every month, and it will be free of crypto hype. There'll be no talk about what network is the cool network or where the price is going. That's not what this is about. This is about the tools, this is about the technology, and it's about the tools that you need to do your job. And that's essentially, yeah, the state of the process, the current information on the state of these processes, because this is going to move fairly fast, we believe. It's going to be over the next few months to the end of the year, there's probably going to be quite a lot of developments. It's also to provide a place where you yourselves can publish your own using, contact me or one of my team and say, look, I've got something in the works which I think everybody should know about, and we can write up an article about it. And as I say, it will be distributed to the people who want to know most about it. So that's the motivation behind this action. It's a very simple thing. It's very untechy. It's very old school, but we believe it'll work because precisely for that reason. And I'll be interested to see what you guys make of it. The Telegram channel, yeah, Casper Dev Connect is the de facto standard right now. Since Barcelona, we're all using it, and that's great. That's worked so far. And as I say, that's, yeah, tooling upgrades, smart contract. These are the things that the points to take away. Smart contract metadata, a Casper-specific tool for interacting with the chain. That's still, in terms of design, that's still a work in progress, but it's something which, yeah, it's something that I'm interested in. And I think it could be very interesting. New SDKs for gaming and NFTs, and improvements to the quality of the existing SDKs. Documentation, ditto, same with that. Dev portal tidied up. And yes, here we go. Good. Yeah, these are some future enhancements which may or may not, I mean, the point of the increase in communication is that we get a better idea of the things that you guys need. So one of the things which has been mentioned was the quality of error handling coming back from the node, which has been raised in the DX channel, and unifying the addresses. So Match Edge, can we talk about that? These things are future releases, and which the idea behind my department is to take these feature requests and pass them back to the guys who can actually do something about them. And with that in mind, I guess the key thing I would like to take away from this presentation is that we are essentially open for business. So increase the conversation around this topic about the DX for Casper and how we can all improve it, and improve it in an efficient way. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now. And thank you very much for your time.